Hello interwebs, welcome to Let's Build Computers. I'm going to show you a bit of overclocking today, which is a computer that came in today. Owner has got a 2nd Gen i7 in there. He's running PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, and like everyone else who plays Battlegrounds, he actually gets pretty good frame rates. He's getting 100, however he wants more. So we're going to see if we can push this thing to get a bit and get some more out of it. So we're going to be looking at the graphics card and the CPU. We reckon it's the CPU that's holding him back a bit more, so my primary focus is going to be on that. So to kick things off, I've got a load of utilities that I've got set up here. The first of which is Intel Burn Test. So we're going to use this to get a base ground for this, so we can get a rough idea on how fast the CPU is currently running. So I'm going to also open up a hardware monitor so I can see how hot the CPU is running. So we're not worried about updates right now. Let's stick that over there on the right there. So when this computer first came in, it was chock-a-block full of dust. So I have a suspicion that his CPU may have been throttling anyway, but we'll find out. So right now, our core temps, we're sitting, let me see, the package is what I'm mainly interested in. We're looking around sort of 30-ish, around that kind of area, and we're idling on a couple of watts. So this thing is idling quite nicely. It's doing its job. So let's fire up the lim pack. We're going to set it to run 20 times, and we're going to hit go. Now, as soon as I start this, as you can see, our CPU is spiking big time. We're up to 85 watts, and our temperatures are soaring. So we're going to leave that to run. We're going to see what kind of temperatures we get. We're going to see what kind of times we get back from Intel Burn Test, so we know what our baseline is, what our start point is. Because the first thing the key thing here is to know whether we're actually achieving anything or not. It's all very well bumping up the clock speed, but if it's not actually getting us any more performance, there's no point. So let's leave this to run, and we'll see what we get. Oof. Right, so while we wait for this to run, let's talk a little bit more about my testing methodology that I'm going to be using for this video. So first of all, Intel Burn Test, if my memory serves me, it's calculating bonkers high prime numbers or something like that. It's either that or it's calculating pi to God knows how many decimal places. So this is giving us a gigaflops output. Not sure how accurate that is or how useful that is as a number, but it's also telling us how long it took to do each cycle of the calculations. So this is also a handy one for detecting thermal throttling, because if your time is slowly getting greater and greater, your CPU seems to be slowing down, and you see this a lot when you run Intel Burn Test on a laptop, where the time will slowly get longer and longer, because as the CPU heats up, it's throttling back to try and cool down. And this is a big deal on laptops with crappy cooling systems, or just, crappy laptops. So obviously, because we've got desktop cooling here, we've got a Sharkoon 120mm water cooler on this thing. So we're not too worried about our temperatures. And at the moment, it seems like we're still sitting around 50, which is great. I mean, heat soak hasn't set in big time yet, but also our fans are currently running at 100%. I am going to do something about that because this computer is noisy as hell. But we're going to do our initial testing with just all the cooling whacked up to maximum. So that's not a factor. What I want to do is I want to try and bring this time down and bring the clock speed up. And obviously the other factor as well is that I'm in kind of a hurry today. I've got a very short amount of time to do this work in. And overclocking is a patient man's game. Once we've set an overclock, my method for stability will be to get through 20 cycles of Intel Burn Test. Now, there are some people who will turn around and go, if you can't run Prime 95 all through the night without any errors, then it's not stable, kind of thing. However, for me, it's a fact of, is it stable enough to use while I'm using it? Now, I don't need my computer to never ever crash despite being on 24/7, because I only play games for several hours at a time. So for me, a computer that can get through a single gaming session or get through 20 cycles of Intel Burn Test without crashing, that's good enough for me. However, I will be advising the customer that once we've done this work, they want to see how they get on with it. And if they get any kind of lockups or crashes, then they're going to need to come in and talk to me about it, and we're going to need to tweak the settings a bit. So firstly, for anyone who's gearing up for a rant in the comments, I'm aware that you need to test for longer to get true stability. However, this is the short version, this is the quick version. So how are we doing here? We're doing pretty good. Let's just let that crack on for a bit longer. I want to make sure that it actually gets through Intel burn-in test before we do anything at all. Okay, so we are looking good. Our total time was 386 seconds rounding up. So I very rarely actually record these results, so I don't know whether that's good or bad. It's just our result right now. We're not bothered about competing with other people here. We just want to make this computer better than it was. So 386 is the time to beat. Our temperature topped out at 50 degrees, so we got no problems with cooling right now. Which is pretty good because, you know, well, 86 watt processor, that's high, not crazy though. Cool, okay, so we also want to check in on our graphics card. So for this, we're going to run up Firmark. So let's close Intel burn-in test. I don't care that a newer version is available. Alright, so GPU stress test. We're going to run this at, we're going to go 1080p, let's go 8 times sampling because this has got a 980 in it, so it should be able to handle that. And let's go GPU stress test. Go! Alright, so we're going to sit and wait for this to run for about, I don't know, 15 minutes or so, or until I think it's proven everything it's going to. We're going to keep an eye on the kind of frame rates we're getting up here. We're currently looking at around about, well, we're averaging 21 frames per second. We also want to see what the GPU temperature tops out at. So we're going to wait. This is going to slowly arc up, and as it increases, the fans will also increase and balance it out. And eventually, it will find an equilibrium where it'll sit. And we're expecting that equilibrium to be somewhere around sort of 70 to 80, maybe 75, that kind of area. Because all graphics cards will generally seek around about 70 to 80 degrees. AMD cards tend to seek like sort of 80, 85. Nvidia tries to sit down at like sort of 70 to 75, but they're all in that kind of region. So let's leave this to run, see what it does. Okay, right, we seem to have leveled out, and we've leveled out really low at 55 degrees. So yeah. That's a lot lower than expected. It's not a bad thing. Lower is better because NVIDIA graphics cards are all about that boost speed, and lower temperature means higher boost. So yeah. So our core is currently sitting on 1328 megahertz. So we're going to be looking to try and push that up a bit. But yeah, we've got our baseline. Our TDP is looking really low as well. It's obviously quite happy with it, the way that things are running. We could probably up the core on this without doing anything else. We don't have to up the power or anything like that. So we'll hopefully get a bit more out of that too. Let's close this down. Let's start getting to work on that CPU. So we're going to quit all this and we're going to reboot into BIOS. So restart. And I'm going to spam the delete key to get into BIOS. Okay, right, so PLL, whoops, auto, oh yeah, we'll leave that on auto, that's not what it was anyway. Okay, memory frequency can stay on auto, and power saving mode can stay off. And that is all fine. Okay, so CPU voltage, right, so our indicated voltage from Windows under hardware monitor was 1281 under load. Now the reason why I say indicated voltage is because the voltage will kind of vary depending on where you read it from, which makes it really hard to adjust the voltage in BIOS because you'll see something completely different in Windows. So in hardware monitor we had an indicated voltage of 1.281. Now as you can see here we're actually set at 1.2 flat. So so what have we got here? We're going to set this to manual mode, and I'm going to set the voltage. Oh, I've got to use plus and minus. Yeah, here we go. So we're going to set this manually to 1.281, and we're going to see what that goes to in Windows, because I want to see how far out we are. So let's go, actually just go 1.25 first, because as I say, I believe that Windows is reading higher than BIOS is. And if anything, I mean, if we're currently at 1.2 flat, and we're at 181 indicated, 1281 indicated, then we are theoretically reading 0.081 volts high. So we want to allow for that. So we're going to take that up by a fraction of a volt there, and we're going to see what that does in Windows. So what else have we got looking down the list? This stuff can all stay as normal. The spread spectrum we want to turn off. Spread spectrum is a feature that allows the CPU to emit frequencies that will try to eliminate electromagnetic interference generated by the computer. This isn't a real thing. This is just for paranoid people, really. The computer is in a tin box. There's no electromagnetic interference coming out of this thing. So we're just going to disable that because, as it says up here, this can interfere in your overclocking. So we're going to turn that off. Right, that's fine. So let's roll back up a bit. Now the other setting I want to check, we're going to set, so CPU power management. So the ratio, let me see, can we change that? Yeah, so the ratio, we're going to want to set that manually in a minute. Turbo mode we'll leave on. Speed step can stay on as well. So what's in OC Tuner then? OC Tuner. Automatically overclocks. No, not really. Okay, that's fine. So that, yeah, that's an automatic overclocker. So, okay, I think we've got our base settings. I want to roll back and check. If I go back to there, yep. So we're currently at 3.4. So our base clock is 100, and our current speed is 3400. So that means that we are running a multiplier of 34. 100 times 34 gives us 3.4 gigahertz, and the CPU will boost up to 3.8. So I'm going to go into CPU power management, and I'm going to set that multiplier manually. So let's roll that up to 34. So basically what we've achieved now is we've set the CPU manually to its stock settings, and we're now going to reboot, and we're going to see how it responds to that. So let's exit, let's save changes and reset. So we should find that our clock speed is exactly the same as it was, but we're expecting to see that voltage a little bit higher than it was before. And we're going to run Intel burn test again, just as a control test, to make sure that everything is happy with the settings on manual. There's no reason why we should have a problem with this. However, with overclocking, you want to change something, test, and so on. You constantly change one thing at a time, and then you test it. I mean, you can change a couple if you want, but, you know, better off just doing one thing at a time. Let's see how we get on. Okay, so we're back in Windows. I started up Hardware Monitor and Intel Burn Test again, and as you can see, everything looks much the same. Our temperatures are about the same. Our voltage it's sitting around the same as it was before. The indicated voltage here is still about, well, it's 1281, it was 1282 previously. Up the top here, it's been maxing out exactly what we set it to, around 1256. So it looks like our BIOS voltage reading, if we read it from up here, is actually fairly accurate, which is good. And our times from Linpack are basically exactly the same as they were before. So I'm going to just go ahead and start applying an overclock now. I'm happy that this is behaving. If these numbers had suddenly started going out of whack and looked wrong, I'd be inclined to let this run for longer, but I'm okay. So let's stop that, back into BIOS again. Okay, right, into advanced mode, AI tweaker. All right, so, okay, so let's actually dial in some more speed. So right now we're sitting at 3400, and our CPU power management, yeah, that's set to 34, and our boost clock is set to 35, which means the CPU can boost up to 3.5 gigahertz. So first of all, we're going to switch off Turbo Core for a moment. Well, yeah, we're going to switch off Turbo Core just while we work on our base clock. So let's bring that down. Let's disable Turbo Core, and we're going to bring this up to 36. Actually, yeah, let's go 36. Let's start off small. So we're going to roll back a little bit. So we're now targeting 3.6 gigahertz. So our base clock is going to be up by 200 megahertz. So this is a really tiny increase, but we just want to make sure that it's okay with us changing settings again. So our RAM speed is still 1333, we're not touching that. So let's save and exit. Okay, right, we're back in Windows, we're starting up Intel Burn Test, and we're now sitting up at a flat 3.6 gigahertz. So it's doing exactly what we told it to, our voltage is exactly what we set it to. However, notice our actual core voltage has gone up a shade. So again, 1291 again, but it spiked up at 1300 there. So you can see why I want all the settings on manual, because when you're overclocking, you don't want to be changing lots of values at the same time. And if you've got your voltage on automatic and it's kind of wandering around trying to find an economy mode, then that's going to be changing variables without your consent. So we've got that pretty much where we want it, and it's, that slight difference is tolerable. Our main base voltage up here is staying the same, so I'm happy with that. Our temperatures have gone up just a tiny weeny little bit. However, that's probably heat soak because the computer has been on for a while now, so not relevant either. Our power consumption is up slightly, we're up to 90 watts. However, in here, our actual output is basically the same. We're looking at sort of mid 11s, low 12s. Although we've got more 11s than we had 12s. I'm going to let that run a little bit longer, because previously we were pretty much sort of high 11s and 12s, whereas it actually looks like we've already dropped a fraction of a second off our LINPACK output. So again, this is not going to make a visible difference, but it shows that we're already actually starting to impact the performance of this computer. Yeah, we've got another 11. Okay, so there's another 12, but we've got mostly 11s there, so we're actually slowly grinding down that time. So we seem to be happy so far. Let's go for something a bit bigger. Let's take it up to, well, let's go up in small notches, because that's standard practice, so let's go to 3.8. My general target today is to try and get 4 gigahertz. I think that's a reasonable target to make on this. If we were going wild, we could probably go much higher than that. However, on a customer computer that is not my own, and it's not one that they are managing, we want to keep it fairly modest. We want to get a little bit more out of it, but we don't want to go mad, because we don't know how it's going to run in real life. We're looking for a reliable overclock here, not the absolute breakneck speed. All right, advanced mode. I wish it would remember what you were previously in. Cool, right, CPU power management, and we're going to 38. And what we're going to do is, as soon as we get to unstable, save changes and reset. As soon as we start having problems with this, if Intel Burn Test falls over or we crash or something like that, that means that we're getting unstable. And what we're going to do at that point is we're going to give it a bit more volts. And that extra power is going to stabilize that overclock. So we don't want to put more volts unless we have to, because more volts is going to boost the temperature a lot more, and it's going to use more power. So we're trying to keep the volts down, but at the same time we will need some more volts eventually to stabilize things. Alright, so here we are again, and we're now running, we've got a flat 3800 megahertz there. So this will calm down. The computer is just turned on, which is why it's not idling. Yeah, we've got Steam complaining and stuff like that. So yeah. Right, okay, how are we doing? Our voltage, we're at 1341 here. So you can see where that voltage is creeping up without us telling it to. Our base voltage up the top is still 1256, which is what we dialed into the BIOS. But you can see what I mean about that little bit of creep there. So let's fire it up, let's see what we get. Okay, so initial reactions, our temperatures much the same, but we've got to wait for heat soak to set in. Our voltage creep is still a little bit high, although it's still the same up here as what we set it to in the BIOS. However, notice our power consumption is now spiking up to 100. We've seen 102 watts there. So, we're a full 15 watts over our stock power consumption now, which I think was 85. So yeah, however, it looks like we're getting lower numbers here again. only by a little bit. We've got 80s on the gigaflops here. We've got 4 11s so far, no 12s yet. So we are seeing an improvement. And the fact that we haven't had to dial in any extra volts yet is a really good start. 53 degrees, that's a new high. That's still really low. You know, I mean, the CPU is good for, well, the CPU will not break until it gets to 100. However, I am happy up to 70 degrees. As long as that CPU stays under 70, I'm completely okay with that. However, again, our fans are at full tilt at the moment, so noisy. Okay, there's our first 12. However, we just had 5 11s in a row, so, you know. Nice, so we got through that with only 1 12. And test completed successfully in 18145. Our original start was 380 something. So let's just see what that doubles to. 18145, 181.45 times 2, 362. It definitely wasn't 362. So we have beaten our burn-in test time. So we are getting faster. We are gaining speed here. We're getting solid 80s on the gigaflops, which we weren't before. So we have got more speed. Let's go straight to 4 gigahertz and see if we can get away with that. You know, I was kind of aiming for 4 gigahertz, but I'm beginning to think that it might be worth going for a cheeky 4.4. That gives us a 1 gigahertz overclock. The other alternative is we go for 4 gigahertz flat with a 4.2 or a 4.4 boost. Because that means it can get just a little bit more clock speed when it's not running flat out. 4 gigahertz. Start off Discord, don't care. Alright. And let's go for 20 cycles here because this feels too easy at the moment. We're going to make sure that it can get through a full 20 cycles again this time. Okay, we are done in 3:42.69. So I'm pretty certain we've taken 20 seconds off of our Intel burn-in test time. And holy crap, look at that, we're getting 10s. So yeah, so as you can see, we're getting visible results from this. Now, it's worth noting that this doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to get better performance in games. This is a synthetic benchmark. Lower numbers doesn't mean that you're going to feel the difference at all. However, it shows that what we're doing is actually making a difference. So, we seem to be stable enough. We're pulling just shy of 110 watts. Our voltage creep is up, but we don't seem to be having a problem. The computer doesn't seem to be unstable at all. So, what we're going to do now, you know what, let's go no guts, no glory. Let's go for 4.4. And because this is so stable, I'm actually going to dial in 4.4 straight off the bat. And we're going to see if we can do that. Okay, so CPU power management, 4.4. Let's see if we can get 4.4. Okay, so remember, we've still got turbo mode switched off at the moment. In order to get turbo mode back on, we need to set the turbo parameters. So the turbo ratio at the moment is currently tracking the base clock. So we'll come back to that later. Oh, blue screen. Okay, right, we got to the Windows desktop and I was starting up the overclock and I was starting up our testing tools again. However, we've got a uncorrectable error. Now, this blue screen is a CPU fault. So, so yeah, our 4.4 gigahertz was that was pushing the envelope a bit too much. So let's hit that reset button wherever it is on this computer. Right, so what we're going to do now, we're going to dial back. We're going to bring it back to 4.2, and I'm going to give it a few more volts because if we were blue screening at 4.4, we're not going to get through Intel burn-in test at 4.2. I overstepped the mark this time round, which was inevitable because I tried to do a 400 megahertz jump, to be honest. So back into advanced mode, AI tweaker. Right, so let's bring back to 4.2. And then we're going to bring up the voltage ever so slightly. Where's our voltage control? 12.5. So let's bring that up to 1.3. That seems like quite a hike there. It doesn't like that. Let's go, where were we? We were 12.5. Let's go 1275. So we've given it a little bit more. Let's see if it likes that. Okay, so we're at 4.2. Our base voltage is up to 1280. So again, we're now seeing that hardware monitor seems to read a 0.005 overread on the voltage, but that's still fine. So the little bit of extra V-core that we've dialed in should allow the VID to ride a little bit higher. I'm not fully certain how this number is getting calculated. I think this might just be sort of the draw, as it were. So let's leave that alone. Right, okay, so let's go for a 20 cycle run and let's see if that is stable. Alright, so far so good. We're running 10s on LinPack. We're peaking at 111, well, just shy of 112 watts. So again, we're creeping up a little bit there. Not too much, considering we're running a higher clock and we've only put in a tiny bit more voltage. But so far it seems to be pretty happy. And also, fun fact, I've got an energy meter plugged into the socket here. And let's just wait for it to spike. We're pulling 192 watts at the wall. So again, despite a big, we're working toward a fairly noticeable overclock here. Now remember, our graphics card is idle. However, the graphics card, even if that pulls 200 watts, it means our total system usage is still less than 400. So once again, please do tell me that you need a kilowatt power supply in your computer. So yeah, right. It's so far our highest number has been 10.8, so we're still getting really good numbers out of this. So yeah, I'm happy. I'm tempted to say let's dial in some more volts and shoot for 4.4 again. I mean, if we go to 4.4, then I'm going to leave turbo core switched off because I don't want turbo core to try and boost any higher than that. That just seems like a bad idea. However, who needs turbo core when your base clock speed is 4.4 gigahertz? Oh no, there's an 11 there. Let's make sure that's stable first. Okay, 330 seconds. Nice. Right, okay. Let's give it some more volts and try for... You know what, I'm just going to fire up... I'm going to do a little more testing first. Let's start Intel burn-in test up again. And I'm going to run up Firmark at the same time. And so I'm going to try and replicate worst case scenario gaming here, where we've got the CPU loaded up to maximum and we fire up the graphics card at the same time. So let's not go bonkers here. Let's just go 1080p, 2 times anti-aliasing. Stress test. Go! And I'm going to Alt-Tab back to hardware monitor and to Intel burn-in test. Right, so now we've got the CPU and the graphics card loaded up at the same time. And it's actually managing that quite well. Normally when you do this, you see a drastic drop in both of them. And actually we're still running, it looks like we're still running 10s here. Let's just wait for that next cycle to come back. Yeah, 10s again. This computer's a beast. This is really good, this build. I mean, it might be a little bit on the old side at a 2nd gen i7, but the CPU is boss. Cool. So yeah, our draw is 112 peak. Our temperatures, we're still under 60, although we have picked up a full sort of we have got almost a full 7 degrees over what we started out at, but you know, that's fine. What's our wall draw? We're pulling 400 at the wall. 400 watts at the wall, so yeah. You can see these steps in the GPU temperature. This is being caused by the intermittent performance. As Intel burn test goes through its cycles, it will momentarily interrupt the performance of Fermark, and when the Fermark performance goes down, the GPU will momentarily idle for a few cycles, which will cause its temperature to plummet. So that's why we're seeing this very stepped increase in Fermark performance. Incidentally, we're actually averaging 36 frames. Oh no, we're on a completely different cycle now, so forget that. Cool. Okay, so that's still happy. Let's try and get 4.3. No, bollocks to it. Let's go back to 4.4. This thing's got 4.4 in it. I know it. Okay. Power management. 4.4. And we're going to need to give it some more volts again. So we're going to up that to, let's take that up to 3. Now we're going on to purple levels here, so I don't know how unhappy that is, but oh yeah, the maximum is 1.99. We're not going to go that high. We're not putting 2 volts through an i7. That's ridiculous. What's it say on the monitor? Anything interesting in here? Not particularly. Cool. Okay, right. Let's see if it'll run that. Save and reset. Okay. All right. So we got 4.4 gigahertz base clock, and our voltage is up to 1.3. The draw here is still creeping, but it still seems to be okay. It's within the same ballpark. I'm just going to leave this to run for a moment and just wait for it to start idling. I want to see if speed step is actually still working. Because obviously one of the drawbacks of having a big ass overclock, oh yeah, there we go, and we're down to 1600. However, even at 1600, we're still idling at like 12 watts here, whereas previously it was dropping down to like sort of 6 or 7. However, that's a couple of watts, no one cares about that. However, it is still idling perfectly. So yeah, right, let's wind it up. Let's go for 20 again. $322, new record. Awesome. All right, so we peaked at 117, so we're a good sort of just over 30 watts over over stock power consumption. We also hit 60 degrees, so we've put in a considerable amount more heat output now as well. And again, remember, we've got a water cooler, 120mm water cooler with 2 fans in push-pull configuration here. So it's good, not great cooling. But that gives you a rough idea on what kind of heat we're generating with, you know, we've put in about 0.1 of a volt over now, which is a reasonable amount extra for a modern CPU. However, we've got a flat, stable 4.4 gigahertz here. So I think it's time to quit while we're ahead on the CPU. I'm happy with the way that that's running. We've got a noticeable increase on synthetic benchmarks. Now, I mean, it's up to him to have a look to see how it affects his bottom line gain, but we'll find out. So we're going to come off of the CPU now, and we're going to see if we can do anything with the GPU. Okay, right, so here we are in Msi Afterburner. So yeah, we've got a GTX 970 in this one, so it wasn't a 980, it was a 970. So yeah, the 970 is a good card. However, that does explain things a little bit more. If you had a 980, I'd have been a bit like, okay, what are you complaining about? But yeah, so what we're going to do, we're going to give this thing a bit more. We want to get a base mark first. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to run the GPU benchmark from Fermark. So we run everything under some controlled setups. Let's run the 1081 and see what we get from that. And then hopefully that will give us a baseline score that we can use to see if we're getting any improvements. So let's let that run through. So our core is floating at sort of 1290. I saw 13 something else just then. but it looks like the boost is dropping off slightly. However, we are seeing 97% TDP here, so we are seeing full flat-out usage here. Okay, so we're midway through the test and it's settled down. We're getting a core boost speed of 1278 megahertz. Now that's a little bit lower than that baseline that we looked at back at the start of the video. However, that's to be expected because we're under benchmark scenarios now. Notice that the GPU power is at 99% TDP, so we're maxing the GPU now instead of just at the start of it we were just ragging it, whereas now we're actually running a proper benchmark. So this should give us a more accurate number. The reason why that boost is slightly lower is because the TDP is higher. So we will get better performance. However, it can't keep that high boost speed up for that. So what did we get? So we've got 4323 points. So 4323 points, that's our score to beat. Right, so let's start out with a 50 megahertz overclock, which is modest, you know. If we were struggling, I would put something in lower, but plus 50 is a good start line. That's just throwing it out there, see what we get. So we've applied that. I've also got this set to apply this on startup. So when we start Windows, it will automatically apply this overclock to the card. Right, let's go again. All right, so we're in this benchmark. Our boost is up to 1328, so we've got a higher boost speed now, and we're running just over 100% TDP. So we're now overpowering the card. So that is expected results. We should expect to see a higher score from this because it's maintaining a higher boost speed. Now the thing is, if we try and take it too high, then the temperature will just skyrocket and the boost clock will dial back and we'll end up with less performance. Now you'll notice that as the card is warming up, the bottom of the screen, our temperature is higher. Notice how the core clock speed has bled off slightly. We're down to 1303. So where the card is heating up, we're losing performance from that heat. So it's important to know that to get truly accurate results, we will need to run a longer test than this. 4378, more points. So that's to be expected. Let's see if we can get 100 over. Okay, go. Oh, apply, and go. So right now I'm doing this very quickly. I'm just bashing out speeds. I'm trying to maintain card temperature between the tests because that will give me more accurate results. Now the card temperature will plummet as soon as we come off of load, but if we can just keep the heat soak, keep the heat sink up to temperature, we'll get more accurate results. So we're currently boosting at 1354. So again, we're pushing the boundaries again. However, again, notice that TDP, GPU power, we're sitting at sort of about 100% there. The previous test, it boosted over that and then dropped back a bit. So it's going to keep seeking 100%. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep rising that core clock until we lose boost clock under load. And then we're going to raise the TDP up, which is basically the equivalent of giving it more volts. That lets the card use more power, which in turn allows it to hold that boost clock higher up. 4440. Okay, more. Give it more. Let's go to 150. All right, we're now boosting at 1400 megahertz, or 1404 to be exact. And our temperature is still very happy. We're sitting around the low 60s. That's going to creep up over time, but we'll give that a test in a minute. Okay, there we go. Our core's just dropped off to 1392 a little bit. That's still higher than we've had previously, so I'm still happy with that. Looks like this graphics card is targeting around 65 degrees or so. This benchmark is actually a bit too quick for my taste. It doesn't give us enough time for thermal, for heat soak to set in. 4493. Okay, 200 megahertz over. we're going to run this one, then we're going to run the GPU burner for a bit, and we're going to monitor that boost speed and just see how long it can hold the boost speed for. I'm happy that we're getting very rapid results here, a lot more so than I thought. This GPU must be running at the reference speed. So yeah, you can see why you can buy factory overclocked graphics cards, because the reference card has always got a load of overheads in it. I mean, yeah, we threw in 100 megahertz straight away. We're now up to 200, and we haven't even changed the TDP yet. This computer had shed loads in it. You know, I said to the customer when he brought it in, I said, you know, look, overclocking is sometimes luck of the draw. There's no guarantee that we can get any real results out of it. However, this computer had loads more under the bonnet. 1430 boosting. 4538, bang. Okay, so we've run it up under the 1080p 2x MSAA preset, and we're running at 100% TDP, and we're currently boosting at 1524. I'm going to leave this to run for a bit and let heat soak set in, and we're just going to see how much of that boost clock we lose. If we can hold it above 1.5 gigahertz, then I'm going to be happy that that's a stable overclock. So let's leave that to run for a bit and see what it does. Okay, right, this has been running for a while, and as you can see, that temperature is now flatlined. We're sitting at 68 degrees. What are the fans up to? Fans are up to 70%. So we're going to have we're going to have some more noise out of this thing. But I don't think the customer is particularly concerned about noise based on the fan setup that this thing came in with. So yeah, we're going to allow that. Yeah, we're still holding 15, 16 megahertz on the boost speed. So let's give it some more. Close. Okay, right. What do we want? So we're at plus 200. Let's take that up to plus 250. And let's apply, and we're going to give it another preset benchmark. Oops, there we go. RIP. Have we crashed? Are we gone? Are we dead? Right, okay, RIP Firmark. Alright, there we go. This thing it had everything until it's got nothing. Right, okay, Firmark, come back. Right, okay. Let's dial that back a bit. Let's bring it back to 225. Apply. And let's try that benchmark again. We're looking for 4,600 points, ideally. Because last time we had like 4530 something. So I kind of want to see 4,600 out of it. 4544. Disappointing. I wanted more than that, but okay. I have a suspicion. Right, we're up on the limits at the moment. I think we're topping out here. We're going to give it some more power. Right, so okay. Let's bring up the power. So what's our limit there? 112. That's not a lot. Okay, so let's bring that up to 105. And let's see how it does with that. I think the Msi Afterburner may allow me to unlock it a bit further. Let's just check the settings. I've already set it to extended MSI. What about third party? What does that give me? I've got to restart Afterburner. Okay, let's restart Afterburner. Fine. We've started minimized. We're still stuck at 112 limit. Okay, let's go for 105. 105.225. Let's see what that gives us. So let's run the benchmark again. So we're looking to be 45.50. That was 45.44 or something like that. So hopefully with the extra power limit we've got, so if you notice along the top now, GPU power is now running, it's now sitting at 106, 107. That's probably going to settle down to 105 in a minute. However, we'll be holding a higher boost clock because we've allowed the card to pull more power. How are we doing at the wall? 380. We're okay. So we should get a higher score now, and with the extra power we might just be allowed to push that up to 250. Oh no, that doesn't like it. I think we're crashing. Yeah, we're dead. Rip. Okay, let's bring that down to 103. Okay, let's try 102. We could try 100 and bring the temperature limit up to 85. No, the two are... Can we unlock those? Yeah, we can. Let's bring the temperature limit up. Let's go for... Let's bring the temperature limit up to 82. Apply. And let's go for the benchmark again. Do we need another Fermark? I think we do, yeah. Score to beat is 4550. And I don't think we're going to do it because our boost... Oh no, we boost... Yeah, the boost clock was looking for 15 something then, but then it dropped back down again. This is exactly what I was talking about, where we're increasing the speed, but it's diminishing returns. We're increasing the clock, but we're not actually getting any more out of it. So, yeah, and we're crashing again. It doesn't like being overpowered, this thing. It does not like the extra power. Okay, let's link those back up again. Let's just drop back down to 100 TDP 225 and just see if we can get a stable run. Because we seem to be up against a brick wall here. It's funny, it seemed to be absolutely fine right up until the point where it wasn't. It was sailing through those benchmarks, and now it's a bit unsure of itself. No, we're boned. I think we're dropping back down to 200. Right, let's dial it back to 200 again. If we can, if we get a clean run on 200, we'll try 210, and I think we might call it a day at 210. And actually, if we get a clean run here on 200, I'm going to call it a day at 200 because, again, I don't want to be at the cutting edge, because the problem is if it crashes while the customer has it, he's not going to know what to do about that. So I want to make sure, I want to go up to the line and then take 2 paces back. If it were my computer, I would sit on the line, because if my game crashes, because I mean I run an old 280X at home, I've got that overclocked. However, for me, if my game crashes, I open up the Radeon control center and I dial my overclock back ever so slightly, or I give it a little bit more power, depending on how bad the crash was. Whereas I can't expect the customer to do that. So we've got to take it up to the line and then take 2 paces back to make sure that it's not going to crash. That looks happy now. What score are we going to get? 4500? Okay, I'm happy with that. Let's quit while we're ahead. Let's save that profile in bank 2. And now we're going to reset and save that in bank 1. So now we've got our stock clock and we've got our overclock profile. So let's go back to our stock clock, apply, and we're just going to run that same preset and just see what score we get. And then that's going to tell us what the score difference was. Now, once again, as with the CPU things, these are synthetic benchmarks. I don't know if this is going to help him in the game. It should do, because 200 megahertz is a pretty good base overclock, to be honest. I wish I'd gotten this much out of the cards that I've reviewed, but then the cards that I've reviewed are typically overclocked out of the box. So, they come out of the factory with, 100 to 120 megahertz on them already. So asking to try and get much more than another 50 to 70 out of them is quite a tall order. Whereas this definitely seems like it's a gigabyte of wind force, I think, aren't they? So yeah, it's a gigabyte card with the wind force cooler, but it looks like it was running the reference clocks on it, which is how we got 200 out of it so easily. All right, 4338. So there's our tangible difference. I think we're going to call it a day. So let's apply that, and we're going to leave it as is. And actually, you know what? Let's run up Fermark one more time. I just want to add a little bit more memory in and just see if that makes any tangible difference. Memory overclocking I'm extremely skeptical of. I don't really see how it makes much difference. Let's dial in another 100 megahertz on the memory and see if that improves our score at all. I don't fully understand how memory speed affects GPU performance, so make of this what you will. 4580. There we go. Cool. So we did get a benefit out of that. Let's give it a bit more. Let's go 150. Save. Benchmark. 4645. And so it continues. Damn. Memory overclocking is awesome. We're just boosting the performance here. Let's see if we can get 200 out of the memory as well. So, okay. 4684. 250. So basically what we're going to do, we're going to keep boosting this until we destabilize again. And as things sit, it looks like that's the general theme here. We boosted up the core clock as high as we can go while maintaining stability. Upping the power limit didn't seem to help us at all there. As soon as we went over power limit, we just destabilized. So we hit a brick wall with the clock at 200. But now we've started adding in a load more memory clock, and that's still improving our benchmark scores. So we're up to 250 on the memory now. Let's see how that does. 4729. And up. Okay. I would be happier. I wish I had time to install 3D Mark on this thing. Because 3D Mark is my stress test for graphics card overclocks. Because if 3D Mark senses any foul play at all, it will cancel the test. Whereas sometimes I get the feeling that FurMark might be a bit too easy. Let's try it. Can we do? I don't know if we can do the 1440p test. Because we're on a 1080p monitor. Alright, well, let's give it more. 300 on the memory. Bearing in mind, of course, that the RAM runs at a much higher frequency anyway, so, you know, 300 is not as bonkers as it sounds. 4760. Okay, I can't remember what the last one is. I think we're hitting diminishing returns here. 4800. No, we're still benefiting, and still it goes up. This is crazy. This card's got loads in it. 400. I did not expect it to go this far. I think this is the last one. If it gets through this one, I'm going to quit while I'm ahead, because that's the thing, is that we haven't had time to really run games on this thing to see how it runs long term. And I think what I'm going to do is we're going to quit while we're ahead, and I'm going to tell the customer to see how he gets on with it. And if it's still solid as a rock, if he sees improvement in the game, then I'm going to say bring it back next weekend, and I'll see if I can get some more out of it. But right now, I'm just like, I really like the results I'm seeing here, but I'm suspicious. I want to see it get through a gaming session a couple of hours long. I want to see the client get through, you know, a couple of PUBG games before we agree that this is absolutely stable. So, $48.26. So every time we bring the memory clock up by 50 megahertz, we get another 25 to 30 points. So that is just a solid winner there. Cool. All right, we're leaving that as is. So what we're going to do, I'm going to save that into Profile 3. And Profile 2, we're going to dial this one back a bit. We're going to bring that down to 175. And we're going to dial in 200 on the clock. So what that gives us, that gives us a safe overclock. So we know that this thing is capable of 200, 400. So if we put in we've got our stock profile, we've got our modest overclock. Oh, I didn't save that. Alright, so we've got our stock clocks. Profile 2 has a modest overclock, 175-200, and then Profile 3 has got our current limits, which is 200-400. Now, I think the memory's still got more in it, but I don't know. We've dialed in a big number there, and I don't want to do much more with it without seeing how it runs long term at this point. So we're going to apply that. Profile 3 is applied. It's going to run that on startup. We're going to tell the customer to take it away and see how he gets on with it. And if he comes back and he says, yeah, I had a good time, then we'll see if we can screw a bit more out of that card. I really want to see what the limits are, but also, it's 20 past 4. I close at 3 p.m. on a Saturday. I think we're all done with this for now. However, he can expect to run up PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds tonight, and he can expect to see a visual improvement in that. He already had like 100 frames a second, he said. But, with a bit of luck, he should be seeing 100, maybe he'll get 120, 140. Who knows? Let's try that. And hopefully he'll get back to me and let me know how this went. So, and then I'll be able to tell you how it went.